YouTube and No Slack fam. If you haven't already, please comment, like, and subscribe. Be sure to hit that notification bell so you can be notified of our future uploads. And if you're up to it, please share. Today I'd like to talk about how to get a service dog. We'll talk about how to get one, how to train one. We'll talk about certifications and how to tell a real service dog from a mere pet. For the most part, we're going to be under Title III of the American Disabilities Act, Title III of the ADA. A service dog differs from a pet in that a service dog is trained to act or to alert to the person's disability. Any breed of dog can be a service dog. That includes aggressive breeds. So if your city has a city ordinance against aggressive breeds or certain breeds of dogs, they have to make an exception for service dogs. So you can go to the pet store, you can adopt a pet. It could be a dog you already have, although depending on the type of training, like if it's going to be like a diabetic alert dog, that's like a tier training program or regimen. So I think having a service dog, if it's going to be for service, is, you know, getting it as a puppy, going through basic obedience, intermediate training, advanced training, and then service work. Although you can start task training within the, you know, as soon as you get the basic stuff down, you can do intermediate training, advanced training, and task training all together. You don't have to wait or do it in steps per se. There are no federal requirements for certifications. The ADA does not recognize those. Like you can go onto a website, pay for a ID card for your pet. That doesn't make a service dog. A service dog is trained to act or to alert to a disability. Now, there's a lot of trainers out there. There's also veterans organizations. Here in Wichita, I use Kevlar K9 with Tony and Katie Turner. They are amazing folks, impeccable friends. Tony himself is an Army veteran and has been training service dogs and dogs in general for a long time. You don't have to go to someone to get your service dog trained. You can do the training yourself. There are a ton of resources between YouTube, books online, it just really depends on what you need. If you feel like you need somebody to help you, then by all means, you know, seek support. But like a diabetic service dog, that's a tier regimen, training regimen. And you're paying for the dog's training. So a dog, like a diabetic service dog, is going to be worth about $35,000 to $40,000 in the current market. A PTSD service dog is probably around $4,000 or $5,000, and it's about a 6-month regimen. And really, the training, you don't have to train multiple hours a day. 15 minutes per day is sufficient. So like public accommodations recognized by the ADA where you can take your dog pretty much anywhere, is like, you know, restaurants, supermarkets, Walmart, you know, public places. If there's like if somebody owns a business out of their house, the only part of their house subject to the ADA is the portion utilized for the business. So, like in our apartment where we live, you come in through the front door is our living room, right? But our work from home offices are past the living room into the hall, like past, you know, into the hallway. So technically, being in our home, although, I mean, you could have it in, you could have a service dog like in our offices, but you wouldn't be able to get past the living room because that's our private living quarters. If that makes sense. If you're trying to take your service dog to school, they might have like an enrollment or like registration process, just, you know, just for the school, for their records. Employers utilize JANs, you know, and I'll include links of ADA Title III, like the actual language, the ADA you know, frequently asked questions, and to JANs for like employers. And I'll also post a link for a general state guideline as far as like work, school, employment, you know, where, like, what documentation is needed. Like in Kansas, I believe, yeah, in Kansas, we did have to get a letter from our doctor to have a service dog in our home so that we didn't have to pay a pet fee. And employers, I mean, they'll want a doctor's note usually. And just because it's a service dog and you have a disability, you are not guaranteed to have your dog at work. It has to be within a reasonable accommodation. Like for my job, to get Ika to come to work with me, she's my German Shepherd service dog. She's in training for diabetic alert. She's trained for PTSD. We're gonna do balance work with her because I was an Army infantryman. I've got back issues, and I got into a bad accident and really took out my back when we got T-boned in the car. So my sciatica can act up and make my legs shake, make me completely unbalanced. So we're gonna have Ika train for that, but that should be a really quick process. But to bring Ika to work with me, it was a lengthy process. Like, they wanted a doctor's note. There was a lot of forms to fill out. Discussion on like the reasonable accommodations as far as like extra breaks, you know, for the dog. You know, and to make it clear, I'm on a quota as far as my job. Like, I'm on a production quota that I have to meet every day. And having a service dog does not take away from that quota. I still have to meet that quota. You know, I can have her there with me. You know, so if I get a PTSD or diabetic thing going on, she can, you know, get in my face, distract me if it's a PTSD thing, alert if it's a diabetic, high or low glucose reading. But your work, at least for me, my work production remains the same. My quality of work remains the same. That doesn't change just because I have a service dog. So I said earlier that, you know, service dogs are task trained to alert or act to a disability. So like seizures, you know, you can get a dog that, you know, if you go down to a seizure, you know, and you're on your back or stomach or whatever, the dog will climb under your neck, under your head to support your head and give your, so you're not like hitting your head on the concrete or whatever. Diabetic alert, you know, they'll smell your blood, or not your blood. They can smell your breath or sweat samples and get your glucose reading from that. You know, there's balance service dogs, you know, blind eyes, you know, if you're blind, they can alert to traffic or people around you. PTSD. Ika is trained to like get up in my face. So when I start, you know, if I have an episode coming on, she can sense that. And she'll get in my face to distract me. And I mean, for me, with my PTSD, that is having a distraction, just the mere distraction of having a service dog is amazing. Like just her being there with me, like that's enough to keep my mind occupied and not on the bad stuff. I personally believe everybody needs a service dog. I mean, Ika, like I've tried medications for PTSD, you know, and they all have their own side effects and whatnot. Ika has done vastly more for me, increased my health, physical and mental, more than medication ever could. Like having a service dog, you know, and I say this all the time, having a service dog brings out the best in its handler and the worst in others. You will get people that are like in your face, both good and bad, like, well, you don't look disabled, why do you have a service dog? Or why is that dog here? Well, I don't have to tell you because, one, you don't run this place, you're just a, you know, fellow citizen. And there's HIPAA laws, like, you're gonna tell me all your backstory? Probably not. But people will get in your face and just be complete boneheads about having a service dog. Like, people are personally fine putting their ignorance, whether they're educated, not educated, they're perfectly fine blowing their ignorance in public. Like, not all disabilities are visible. Like, a person can have a heart condition requiring a service dog or have seizures, like that's not always visible. And because you're not in a wheelchair, because you're a double amputee or completely blind, they think you're not disabled, which is completely ignorant. But you get these kind of people in public all the time. Me personally, I wish I wasn't disabled and didn't have a service dog. Like, we're out riding motorcycles right now. I'd love to go on a 1,500-mile trip, you know, take leave from work, go on a 1,500-mile trip, but being tied down to a service dog, that's hard. I mean, my wife has a service dog too, so we've got 2 service dogs, so she and I can't just pick up and go on a ride without, you know, entrusting our dogs to someone to watch them or board them. And, you know, Tony and Katie are great at Kevlar K9, like they do board dogs. But with our medical conditions, it makes it a lot harder to enjoy, you know, and have a good quality of life. It's just, you're catching flack with people. You need the dog to like help and support you physically and mentally, if pertinent, and you're tied down like 100% of the time. Like, the dog needs taken out, they get sick, they vomit and poop. Like, having a service dog is not all, you know, it's not just You know, and people gloat in public about having a service dog or seeing a dog in public. Like little kids, like, oh, look, daddy, mommy, doggy. Can I pet the doggy? And I'd say probably 6 or 7 out of 10. I might be pushing it. Maybe 5 or 6 out of 10. Maybe half or a little over will recognize that it's a service dog, it's working, and that you shouldn't like confront the person or the dog. Or you get people that like, and you're not supposed to do this, you're not supposed to like talk to the dog, because I mean that in of itself is a giant distraction. So how do you tell real service dogs from fake ones? A real service dog is task trained to alert or act to a disability. Now, you can't just, like if I take my dog into a hotel or anywhere public, they can't make you put on a show for them and like, look, my dog can like get in my face and lick me when, you know, when I start crying or act out to PTSD or whatever. They can't make you do that. There are 2 specific questions that people in public can ask, and that is, 1, is your dog a service dog trained to perform a specific task or purpose? And 2, what task is your service dog trained to perform? Those are the only 2 questions, and I kind of hate trying to answer those because, well, I found a way to, like for my PTSD, I'll just say my dog has been trained to alert to physical cues, or like physical bodily cues. So that's, I mean, being a task, service dogs are task based, so they're not just a pet. If you're out in public at a restaurant, or yeah, like say you're out at a restaurant, your service dog should be under the table or sitting beside you, close in next to you, and you're not going to be feeding him at the table or from the table. You're not going to have him on top, you know, on top of the tabletop feeding your service dog. Like that's a no-go. It's a distraction to your service dog. Now, I guess a German Shepherd, like they are inherently mouthy. They leak a lot because they're, and when I say leak, like they whine or whimper. They make a when they see another dog. It's okay. That's normal. Like service dogs are not robots. Like they're still dogs with like a mental capacity of like a 3rd or 4th grader. Like they're dogs. They're gonna. I mean, Ike is trained not to take food from other people in public. She's trained not to get stuff off the floor. But I still have to watch her and keep an eye on her because she's a dog. Like she's not, you know, she doesn't have the mental capacity of a 30-year-old man or woman after being instructed, hey, don't eat that off the floor. Oh, okay, got it. It'll never happen again. And guarantee never happen again. Like it's a dog. Like it's not gonna, it's not realistic. It's not a realistic expectation. You have to be mindful of your service dog. So if your service dog comes into contact with another dog, the other dog's like, or yip, 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 you know, if it's a little tiny dog. All that yipping, that's not a service dog. Like, you might get a little woof, or, you know, something small. I'm like, I got quiet, or, you know, whatever your service dog's name is, quiet, and you know, that should be the end of it. You shouldn't have all this yep. Service dogs don't pull like they should heel, but I guess a high drive and I walk slow. But that's just, it's extra training they have to do. If you're in a grocery store, a fake dog will be sniffing all the food. Obviously, if it's sniffing food in a grocery store, your dog's not under control, they can ask you to leave. Like that, whether it's a service dog or a pet. And oh, and that's the other thing. Pets, comfort support animals, emotional support, they do not have the right to be in public spaces like a service dog. Service dogs can go essentially anywhere with you, minus like hospitals that are like, well, they can go to hospitals, but they can't go into like sanitary areas. You can have your service dog with you in the hospital if you are capable of, you know, having someone there or yourself taking care of the service dog, like letting it out and stuff. If you can't get up out of bed to take care of the dog, you cannot ask the hospital staff to step in for your service dog. You know, and there are times when Ike will sniff something and I'll snatch her leash a little bit, you know, give her a snap of the leash, so like as a correction, and it stops. Like a pet, like if they keep going after food, like and even if it's a service dog in training, like practice at home before you take it out in public and then having it act up, because it's not within your control. Like if you're giving it corrections and it's still getting into food and, you know, misbehaving, being loud or mouthy, like continuously, it's not under your control. You shouldn't have it in public, service dog or pet or not. And this is kind of a video for those that walk up to a service dog and like start distracting it. Like, I mean, I'm not a lawyer by any means or even close to the imagination, like, but that's got to be a heck of a way to get sued. Like, you came up to me, like, theoretically, you distract my service dog, I fall down to the ground and start having a seizure, and my dog's not there to support me, and I injure myself, you know, because this, you know, the service dog wasn't, you distracted the service dog, and therefore the dog didn't get under my head to support my head, so then now I have like head or neck injuries. I'm coming after you. Like, if it's me, I'm gonna find a lawyer that'll sue you. I wish more people would treat service dogs as like a wheelchair, like nothing to see here, like it's just a wheelchair. Like, unfortunately that's not the case, and you know, kids, they don't know any better. To recap, Title III of the ADA governs service dogs, service animals. There are no federally or state required certifications, although you can get some, but they are not federally required. You do not have to take your service dog in training to a trainer. You can do all the training yourself, from basic obedience, intermediate training, and then advanced and task training. You can do all that on your own. Although I will point out that under JANs, they do say that employers can ask you to perform the task, just to make sure that the dog is capable of performing the task that you claim it's been trained to do. Now, if it's certified through a trainer, usually a letter from the trainer is sufficient. You don't have to have them perform. We've talked about like where to get a service dog. I recommend getting a puppy. And you want the puppy to be calm and confident. You don't want an excitable dog. Calm and confident, because you don't want them to be afraid of like loud noises. You're going to be around traffic and public spaces like skateboards, elevators, escalators. All that takes time and training. You don't want an excitable or fearful dog as a service dog. We've kind of talked about where you can take your service dog, public space at restaurants, businesses within private residences or private property. And that's the other thing, private property. You have no right to have your service dog in someone else's home. You got to get their permission first. You do not have to have a vest for your service dog. That is not a federal or state requirement. Your service dog should always be under your control, whether off leash or on leash. And service dogs do have to obey leash laws. I have a pre-law background. In my job, I'm always researching and applying law. I mean, that is my job. And I'm quite good at it, to be honest. Without bragging, but I'm good at it. What I lack is, like, when I was in pre-law, we used to use like Westlaw or I forget what the other one was, like Nexus Law or something. There, it was really easy to find case law on like any subject matter. I don't have access to that, and they're like $3,000 a month. So when you're looking at the law and like black letter law, like this, like the statutes, the codes, like Title III of the ADA, black letter law, you're only getting a portion of the law. You lack the court's interpretations of the law, like other cases that have been brought forth to be determined by the court system. So that's a lot of hit or miss, and I'm having a lot of trouble finding a blanket statement saying or giving a service dog unlimited off-leash control. Like, you can have them off-leash in limited circumstances for a limited amount of time, not 100% of the time, all the time. I really encourage you. We're getting off here at Yoder, so I'm wrapping up here. So we're gonna go to Carriage Crossing for dinner to celebrate my promotion. But I really encourage you to really, like, if you're a business owner, you work in a public space, or you're maybe thinking about getting a service dog, like, really look at Title III ADA. Know that the public is going to be a nuisance to you, both good and bad, and potentially hazardous to your health. Though not, that doesn't happen a lot. But yeah, do your research. Figure out if you have the capacity to, and and the will to like train a service dog, because it takes, I say just 15 minutes a day, but you go, that is the minimum. And it is it's a commitment for the lifelong of the dog, and you are always training. Whenever you go out, it's always a training session. So if you haven't already, YouTube and No Slack fam, please comment, like, and subscribe. I appreciate your consideration and your shares and your viewpoints, so please comment. I look forward to it. Have a good one, y'all. Bye. Bye.